addition down the road, of street reconstruction, we could potentially put a raised crosswalk at maybe where the library sidewalk comes across.
Okay.
But at this time, it's not recommended.
I was just kind of wondering if that was a crosswalk where you got it, like you take out the two spots and then you got it going completely across, a hash going across the road. What is,
That was part of something that was in the design that the engineer for the Lawton Deeds had on one of their drawings. They shouldn't have been shown on this drawing.
okay. All right, that's where my confusion came in, because I was like, I thought we weren't putting a crosswalk across
Yeah.
there because of the,
When we talked about it, we did talk about like that area by Wall Street, you know,
Yeah.
where there's a lot of pedestrian traffic and a lot of people cross there anyway, so that made sense to put one in that spot.
So I will include that in my sidewalk repairs for this year. We'll do an ADA there with a cast iron detectable tile, and we'll put pavement markings as well. The handicap parking, I don't know what you guys wanna do, because you're required to provide one handicap parking spot for every 25 spots. We have 150 Greg spots in the Deeds, somewhere in that range. Currently have 6 handicap spots now, I believe. So I don't know, we meet the current requirement
In the lot itself.
in the lot itself.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know where additional handicap spots we wanna add. Kinda, that feel like needs to be a discussion amongst all of
What was
us.
the total number of spots in that lot, did you say?
Greg, I believe it's close to 150.
I'm gonna have to say, okay,
and how many handicap you got now?
6,
yeah,
if I recall correctly.
okay.
And that's with the ADA compliance.
Yes.
So that's meeting that compliance.
I just wanna make sure Greg concurs with the numbers I'm throwing out there.
Trying to open that. We did talk about, we could do a more detailed study and count of how often these
Those
6
spots are
handicap
occupied.
spots are occupied throughout different times of the day. We haven't done that, collected enough data on that. We could do more of that.
As a handicap person, I must say, having to park handicap down in the lot and then hike your way up the hill to Main Street, for instance, I wouldn't use the lot handicap spots. I'd cross my fingers there was one on Main Street.
Have
There
you,
are a couple handicap spots on Main Street. There's one on Dietz down toward Main Street. There's a couple around.
Across from the lot, there's a couple too,
I think so.
like at least one.
I'd have to look at our maps.
There's one in
I don't
front
have
of
them all
Meg's, there's one
memorized.
in front of the Autumn. I like to eat out.
have you, Scott, do you mind if I ask her a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Have you found that you have any trouble finding a handicap spot downtown at any times or
Yeah.
often,
I
or?
mean, even though somebody did a study and said, oh, there's always a handicap spot open, I must come at the busy time or something, and I don't find spots to park. And then there was talk about putting a bus down to the baseball parking lot or something, and I, again, wrote and said that that was not conducive either, because that means I have to get up the step into the bus, and it's just very difficult. That's why I'm sitting talking to you rather than standing.
That's okay.
I mean, are there particular spots on Main Street, restaurants that you struggle to find a spot at? I mean, somewhere we should look at in particular?
I'm sorry, I
That's
didn't do
okay.
enough thinking about it.
That's okay, I'm just
I didn't know
curious.
it was on the agenda.
It's okay.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
So, let's go back a little bit here. Traffic site distance, are we all right with sending up to remove the 2 parking spots?
I am.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so yeah. And then pedestrian accommodations, for the crosswalk by Wall and Dietz, we're okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so we can bring that up, then the handicap parking spots that we're just talking about. I think, take a little time and look at it. We can look at Main Street, we can look at, do maybe a more comprehensive, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that was gonna be my question, sort of what's the purpose of looking at the handicap parking, to increase the number? Is that the kind of goal here, or?
Yeah, like Greg was saying, take a look at, do a couple of times throughout a week and see where we're at. You know, maybe we can incorporate that with Main Street as well, to see, front of the business, the restaurants and stuff, and see, cause maybe it's more appropriate to look at Main Street to put more handicap on than
Yeah.
up here.
Yeah.
Because I think originally it came from folks at Beach Street Plus, but I think, you know, getting more information just in general on what's available would be really helpful, like even hearing, you know, that maybe it's certain times of day, you know, like when traffic is heavier, because I know that we, you know, my wife has a handicap parking pass, and oftentimes when we're downtown, we do use it, and sometimes we don't even use it, you know, so I think it might be, you know, related to, you know, traffic timing, you know, things like that too, but it'd be interesting to get more information, you know, more comprehensive information on that.
We tried to get people to be on Main Street and to,
Mhm.
you know, whatever. I withdrew all my money from the bank because I used to be able to park in the parking garage, and then it was right through that walkway. It was all flat. I could get right to the bank. Now it's very difficult to find a spot to get into the bank. So I just withdrew from Main Street Bank and went out on Oneida Street.
Okay.
Just a comment.
That's all right.
Thank you.
So
Have
the only
problem
one
spelling.
mentions the 282 request will not be at tomorrow night's meeting.
No,
It'll be at the
yes.
next council
Yeah.
meeting.
No, that's fine.
Just wondering.
Do you want that on the consent agenda, discussion agenda, does it matter?
I'd put it on the consent, I don't know what your feelings are.
I think consent is fine.
Alright. Any more on that topic? Okay.
Got a good plan.
Watershed trails on city property.
We don't have anything to present on this, but this was something we talked about a while back when we were looking at different uses, and I think this committee kind of wanted to continue the conversation about where we want to go with our public access trails. Watershed.
So I know, the new council member, Mike Foster Rothbard has an interest in this. So, you know, I don't know if we could recommend having him participate in our discussion, or at least attend maybe a meeting to talk,
I think
because
that
I
was
know,
part of the reason we didn't talk about it last time too.
was supposed to, he wanted to come to
We
the
thought-
meeting to
yeah.
talk about this, and then he couldn't make it, so.
Okay.
Whether or not he even wants to participate at this point, this was a couple months ago, before he was a council person, so I don't know.
I can tell you, he's stopped in my office and we've
Did?
had extensive conversations about the trail system. In fact, he and a group that he's associated with have been collecting GPS locations of all the trails. We do not have an inventory of all the trails in the watershed properties. And he's been sharing that with our staff, and Maureen's been creating mapping with the trails. It's not completely, it's not complete yet.
Yeah.
Let's say, there's a lot of data he sent us, and we're sifting through it. But one idea that we had was maybe, coming up with a QR code, maybe on our new signs that we put up, that we put on the sign, someone could scan it to see where trails are, maybe there's a, I don't know, a trail app that we could use to, for people, to guide people through the watershed property. I just, we're loosely talking about that.
Was this the environmental board that he was maybe working with?
I think so.
I think that's
yeah.
where maybe the conversation was circulating. Well, that's really neat.
So is this something we want environmental board to look more on, or?
I think they're working on it.
Yeah, they have, because I was
Yeah.
at a meeting with them and they looked it all over, they seemed very happy with it, you
Yeah.
know, so.
Maybe they got stuff they can pass to us?
Well,
I
is
think
Mike,
they did.
is Mike going to be the
Usually is on.
liaison to that, so
Yeah.
it might make sense for him to bring that to council, just like any other board now.
Okay.
It's on council.
That
Or
might
maybe
be,
it comes back.
that might be
Yeah.
more helpful to us,
I think so.
Mhm.
To look at the data maybe.
yeah.
So that was the plan, is sort of for public information?
Yeah, I
Uh-huh.
think so.
Yeah,
Because it's really not, again, it's not mapped.
right.
We're working on mapping it, and, I don't think there's much knowledge of them, so
Yeah.
a little bit of maybe a promotional campaign maybe or
Yeah.
something, I don't know.
Yeah, that's really
'cause I mean, these aren't trails that we take care of, these are,
That's the other thing, we don't maintain them, so it's all voluntary, people are out there, maintaining the trails for us, they've established the trails. I don't believe, Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, that the city staff has anything to do with the trails in the watershed.
So it'd be like use at your own.
Yeah, using your own risk, that kind of thing.
So what Mike is looking to do in the environmental board possibly as well is get information and make the site more kind of public
Yeah.
friendly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the idea.
because I know they, with the bike trails and stuff, they have an app. They kinda link them all in, all up and around, and so, there might be one for trails like that too, I don't know.
The other thing is, do we wanna mark them, cause they're not marked, like, you go to a state trail,
Yeah.
there's trail markers to guide you so you don't get lost. So, I don't know if we're talking about going to that level or not, but there's quite a bit of discussion that really, I think, needs to happen
Yeah.
related to
think
these
that's-
trails.
Would it be a liability issue? Like would the city have, should the
That would
city?
be something we would wanna explore, yeah.
Yeah. It would seem like it maybe, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, we have the Susquehanna Trail map well, it's identified well,
Mhm.
so we're gonna promote these other trails. I think something along that line has to happen.
Now, would this wouldn't be part of that big project we're trying to do to interlock from down by the soccer fields, by the wastewater treatment plant, all the way up through the parks, through the,
The Greenway,
yeah,
I mean, I think this would tie into that,
okay.
Well, it's kinda tied in with the local waterfront
Right.
revitalization
right?
stuff we're doing.
There could be grant opportunities through the LWRP in the future for trail improvements, I think.
And may I again? I'm a longtime member of ADK, the local hiking Susquehanna chapter of ADK. And we do a lot of trail maintenance up around Arnold's Lake. And it is, like you say, all volunteer, clip clop something. Anyway, they go with their clippers and their chainsaw. One of our people are approved by DEC to use a chainsaw on the trails. So contacting them, you could get a lot of information. We use Wilbur Park a lot, all those trails, the Greenway. In fact, we donated one of the signs for the Greenway.
Okay.
And it's the Austin family that are the, like chair or president and, Tom maybe? It's susqadk.org, and then you could get in contact with the people, but they'd be a real resource to help if you wanted to open up those trails. And before you go on a hike, you have to sign a form, liability form. So, everybody, property owners are protected, the leader's protected, ADK's protected. It's just standard procedure.
That's another good point, like, the state trailhead, you have the sign-in
Yeah.
kiosk.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
nothing like that, even in the Susquehanna Trail.
That just lays out kind of here are the rules.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever
Yeah.
done them before, but they have the date you're there, how many people are in your group, when you started your hike, where you're
Check
heading,
out.
and when you plan to return. And then when
Let
you're
them know
done,
you
check out.
returned.
Yeah,
I bet you,
it can be a
if
secret.
20% of the people that hike the trail do that,
Oh, yeah.
we're lucky.
You're lucky.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to discuss here, I think it's a good thing, and I think I like your idea, if Mike can,
Yeah, I think somebody who's invested in it,
Yeah.
should give some feedback to that too. Sounds really.
maybe you can do that at council meeting to bring everybody kind of up to speed,
He could,
yeah,
yeah.
what do you think?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. We can ask him to do that, not from let me get a couple council
Just bring it on
meetings
him.
underneath.
Throw him into the deep end.
Hey, guess what you're doing tomorrow? Okay, we'll ask Mike to. All right, request for the city to incorporate Buena Vista as a city street. And this came through me through an email from the mayor, and I said, put it on the agenda, we can discuss it. And I think that's why you're here, correct?
I'm the author.
So how about you give us a quick,
Did you pass it on to your committee?
that's what we're doing
The
right
letter.
now. The letter?
Yeah.
I think did I?
So,
I think I did.
Did we all get it?
I don't remember seeing it.
No.
If it went out today, you know, late afternoon, I didn't
No,
see it.
this was a couple weeks ago, and they said put this in.
Pre-holidays?
Probably. I may have forgotten to do it.
Okay,
I've-
I'd have to go back. and
I'll
see
just
it.
eat it. I probably forgot to do it.
I brought
So,
it. with
okay.
me.
I'm sorry.
I wrote this to Len Carson, the Fifth Ward councilman. I attended a recent planning committee meeting at which David Pasinich was granted permission to erect a 24 by 24 shed on his property on Buena Vista Avenue. There were only 4 of us from the neighborhood in attendance. I provided some background and offered my concerns amid questions about the proposed structure. There was a good exchange of information. I will try to provide my conversation here as best I can. Ready, here we go. More than 100 years ago, farmland was divided into lots with houses built by the developers, referred to now as the West End Fifth Ward. When the developers deeded over the roadways to the city of Oneonta, they neglected to include Buena Vista Avenue. Although Buena Vista Avenue is shown on all the maps, it remains a private road maintained by the residents that live there. The property owners on Buena Vista Avenue pay property taxes but do not receive any services or road maintenance. My concerns as a resident of Morgan Avenue, downslope from the Pasinich property, is water runoff. Oh, here we go. I've lived in my home for 53 years and have had increased water runoff on my property since Buena Vista Avenue has been developed. This has required me to install 2 sump pumps, one outside to divert the water before it gets into my garage, and one in my basement to remove water that seeps through my stone foundation. The area above my property is called the Table Rocks for a reason. The area is perched water. I remember hiking in the area during a drought in August and my sneakers got wet. Since the property on Buena Vista Avenue has been developed, the runoff has increased. It doesn't take a PhD geologist to know that the more you cover the land, the less infiltration there is and the more runoff occurs. The approved addition of a 24 by 24 shed, as explained by David Pasinich, will be on blocks, which will not increase runoff, so my concerns were alleviated. My neighbor, 34 Morgan Avenue, often gets as much as 6 inches of water in her basement when it rains. Her dirt and stone driveway flows down the sidewalk and across my driveway. During the winter, when the melted water freezes, the end of my driveway turns to ice and it's hard to stop before going into traffic. And I also will interject, it's not written here, but I've seen the children that walk to Plains School and they're slipping on that ice too. I implore the city of Oneonta to take possession of Buena Vista Avenue and provide storm sewer, paved and maintained roadway, street lights, etc. This will alleviate problems on the properties on Buena Vista Avenue and Morgan Avenue. I realize this will be an added cost to the city of Oneonta, but it will be money well spent. Thank you for reading this follow-up with the planning committee, and please take this recommendation to the council for consideration. Mark Drennick then sent it to Scott, so that this committee, because it is a quality of life issue. So I got a response from Len Carson. Good morning, Moira. Storm water has been an issue for you and your neighbors for several years. During severe rain events, your neighbors have endured substantial damage. Have you talked with David about capturing stormwater and diverting it prior to it heading your way? I know city staff tried both sides of Morgan Avenue above you several years ago and had some positive results. I will go and walk Buena Vista later today and let you know if I come up with any more ideas. I can talk with DPS superintendent next week and start the conversation with him about capturing stormwater and what would be needed for the city to take possession of the road. I'll keep you in the loop. Thus ends the reading.
And I didn't know Len's response, I'll be honest with you. I don't remember if I got it, I might have.
It looked like it came just to me.
Okay. So, and the mayor asked if we could put this on and start talking about it, and then, that's why it's on here. I said, sure, we can start the conversation. We're not gonna have any answers about this tonight, I can guarantee
know.
that.
I just,
But-
we need to have it settled. sliding it over to the city.
So some of the problems with this is it's private property, so we can't just go and take it.
It's a private road.
It's a private road, so we can't really there's very little what we can do on private
Oh,
property.
I'm sure they signed it over to the city.
Typically, before we even consider taking any kind of road, it has to meet the specs, and we go by, was it DOT specs?
We have city specifications that we require. Typically, if we're gonna take over a road from a development, say there's a development done in the city, we want them to have, 12 inches of subbase, geotextile fabric, separating the subbase from the existing soil. We want 2.5 inches of binder, 1.5 inches of top, appropriate drainage, curbing, and that's what we would require from a developer to take over
I
a
know it's a
roadway.
great deal of money,
Yeah.
but it's really, a sad thing on Morgan Avenue. I know that, David Pacinich has hired an excavator from Otego. I'm sure you know who I mean.
Larry Stevens.
Thank you, Larry Stevens. I had Larry Stevens do some work for me on my little 1/4 acre, and it was $12,000. I know about 3 houses down, they had an excavator come in and do like, I think they called it a swell. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
And-
Swell.
And to catch the water before it got in their house. But again, it's costing us so much money, and if we could just have these owners hand it over to the city, and the city expend the tens of thousands of dollars that it's gonna take, we sure would appreciate it in the neighborhood. I know it's a lot to ask.
Yeah, and I think we have to, on our end, do more research and see what's there, what exactly the issues are, the problems are. I mean, cause it is a big cost, and in case you haven't read the paper, we were having knockout, drag-out fights up here about the budget this year, so.
Every organization is, I just had a Zoom meeting for church, and it was the same thing. What fundraisers can we do, because we need the money, so.
And some of ours is it gonna increase our staff, cause we have minimal staff for what we have. And I know I knew it for Chris, how many miles of road do we have right now? 44 miles of road that we maintain. With a handful of people.
Well, my mother taught me that if it's not worth asking for, it's not worth getting it, and this is definitely worth getting.
No, I'm just telling you everything we gotta look into.
Sure.
It's a, that's why I said we won't have an answer. This will probably be a little bit going down the road before we even have an answer. But we can start the discussion. Very few ways that we can take private property.
But just to, out of curiosity, who actually owns the road then? It was originally a
It's a
developer, but
driveway,
is it like the individual property owners that
Yeah.
are in possession of it now?
Someone
Okay.
that lived in Goodyear Lake owned it, and it was
Yeah.
like up for taxes because he didn't want it. And, I don't know, I wish that Dr. Pacinich was here, but I think he might have purchased it. Cause he purchased a little piece of property behind my neighbor's house, so.
So the
He might
road is
have.
owned by one person perhaps, and then
That's what
there are
I
other
think.
residents,
Yeah.
driveway, I guess, and then there are other residences on it,
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Yeah.
But
and
this is
that's-
officially part of the city.
Yes.
This
Yeah,
street.
it's
Yes, there
in-
was
So
a-
they're
It's on
city,
all the maps
they're
and
city
everything.
residents,
Yep,
pay city taxes,
oh yeah.
except for
They
this
have-
particular.
They have, numbers of their mailboxes, so their mail's
Yep.
delivered.
Yeah.
But there is other roads that are private that we don't maintain.
Yeah, King Street's a good example.
King Street, we
Yeah.
got the Roundhouse Road down through there that we actually don't maintain that. Although we did put a light pole up there.
We don't even have that.
I think, so yes, to answer your question, yes, we can look at it, like Len said in his response back to you about, we got a lot that we gotta look at on, least be able to come up, cause I know it was fresh off the planning board and, you know, in your email and stuff, and I wanted to have you have an opportunity to come talk to some of the council and
Thank you.
be
Thanks for
heard
letting
about it.
me.
And like I said, we will, I don't know how the answer is or how long it's gonna take. It's gonna take us a while, cause we're gonna have to look at maps and property maps and drainage and,
Probably talk
I
to the
mean,
residents on Buena Vista.
Yeah.
Get some of
Yes.
these answers, because I don't know the
It's a
answer.
good
yeah, cause we gotta look at, I mean, like you're saying, drainage issues and stuff like that, so we really gotta take a comprehensive look at everything so we know what we're looking at. So, we'll start the process of just looking at it.
Thank you.
Okay. Alright. Parking fines. Yay. This is off of my request.
Yeah, I remember this one.
Because of an email from our codes about, he didn't think that it was a deterrent because it was so low.
Yeah.
And I kind of agreed that I think $20, first I didn't want to see our parking fines into the other general. I wanted it kind of broken out a little bit, in our fee schedule.
Yeah.
That parking fine should have its own thing there with,
Oh, right, okay. That's right.
with the starting point, what happens at, you know, how it increases if you don't pay
Yeah.
and go up. And I think $20 is too low to start. And I can see where it wouldn't be a deterrence. And in his email to us, he said how a couple people got tagged 2 or 3 times and they still just keep doing it and they don't. So,
Yeah, 'cause I remember seeing that in the email, cause I know that we've gotten several, input on several different occasions that people said, if you just tag people, they'll stop parking in the wrong places, but I think we're seeing that that's not actually effective at this point, if it's $20 and people are getting multiple tickets on the same car in the same location on the same day.
Yeah. Do we know what other cities are of comparable size, in terms of downtown, what they charge?
I did not look that far, I'll be honest with you.
That would be
That's
a good
always-
idea to get a comparison.
Yeah, I always think that's a good place to start at least.
It is, I just wanted to see, I just put it on there to keep it up. You know, like I said, I think the first thing is to break it out on its own.
Yeah.
I
And the
think that
second
makes
is to
sense.
ask, you know, maybe if we can keep, a little bit of records as we write things, maybe how many we write to, in the same general area. You know, like, cause East Street, some of this came off of
Yeah.
East Street, because that seems to be a hot area right now with school and having people have issues trying to get to the school and then get back out of the school and then, you know, and we did get that picture where they're parked all over from, I think it was,
Yeah.
Jill sent it to us. And so you can't have two-way traffic and, you know, the enforcement and we're, you know, and it's, you know. I just think if we can just get some data maybe for a couple months and then see about maybe May, look at doing an increase. Even if we have it ready for next year, not necessarily this year, but if we could maybe have it done ahead of time, so we know going in that we're gonna raise it, people are gonna know that we're gonna raise it, so there's a little bit of time,
Yeah.
you know, and what it's gonna start out, and what it's gonna be, how, you know, before it doubles, or however we do it. I don't know if we double it, if it triples, or if it, how it goes, the steps.
Well, I think that would also give us time to look at some of those comparison
Yep.
cities, and come up with some, other models that we can look at that would be helpful.
And I think this is a good time to do it too, because it's the first of the year, we have our new parking enforcement officer in place, so,
I think it's on people's minds.
yeah. And would that be hard data to obtain, Greg?
Well, I wanted to ask, what data are you looking to obtain specifically?
So I was thinking like, if we could look and see like how many parking tickets we write, and what seems to be our general areas of,
Finding
Like what zones,
yeah,
I guess.
where fines are occurring.
yeah,
Yeah, that's easy enough to.
okay. I think we could, and then we that'll also give us time to maybe look at, what other municipalities around us do.
Like, for example, in Cooperstown, which is not really equivalent, but like, what's their fine, you know, their fee?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't either. I've never gotten, proudly, I've never gotten a ticket there.
I got a warning there once, when I was on the county board.
But they have, I mean, their parking, you know, sort of regime is
Yeah.
extensive because of all the visitors that they receive, so it's not really similar necessarily, but.
I think they actually have the one that walks up and like puts chalk on a tire or whatever, and they kinda walk up and back and, so.
They also have pay, parking, lots versus on the street, I mean, there's just a lot of
Yeah.
variety.
And this might lead to a bigger discussion too. I mean, I know like they had the parking task force, where we're trying to figure out about paid parking. Maybe it's not just downtown that we do it, maybe it's a citywide paid parking, or,
I
you
think
know,
that's,
help enforcement, help with safety, help with, you know, just, that's just.
Yeah, and I think you're right, I mean, that's what I was thinking, just in terms of when we started the discussion, that this is really part of a larger
Mhm.
discussion too. I mean, it's an important one to talk about fine scale, but within that broader umbrella of parking. It seems like it's pieces of a puzzle that if we could get them, you know, the fine piece will be, I think, answered once we get all these other pieces figured out too.
And I'm gonna say it out here out front, I'm not looking at this as revenue generating. I don't believe that this should be as a revenue generating for the thing. We want compliance for safety reasons. And that's what I'm focused on, is the safety reasons for this, is even pedestrians when they're walking, the bikers that are biking where we don't have bike lanes, you know, there's a lot, that's why we want the compliance for safety issues. It's not in my eyes, it's nothing about revenue. But if we're not getting compliance because it's not a deterrent, because it's too low, then I think we have to look at that. So,
Yes.
and I think also just, you know, keeping in mind that, like, those East Street concerns too, because I know that you brought up that was one of the parking areas, you know, that had come up, you know, with the parking fines. Cause I know we had started to address some of those concerns, especially with the school zone there. But then I'm also thinking about, how you were saying, you know, that there might be, it sounds like some kind of zoning, you know, like with downtown, maybe in other areas as well. So that's, I think, where it'll be interesting to get more data on where those parking fines are happening, you know, because that'll give us ideas of concentration, right? So,
and also it's written in our code, specific streets have parking at such and such a time, this, and maybe we need to take a look at that too overall. You know, maybe it's not conducive to have alternate street parking because it's too confusing. Maybe we figure out one side of the street if possible and, you know, make it less confusing. And, you know, there's some areas, like, I think, Greg, I think you and I had that conversation one day, like on River Street. There's a lot of places on River Street you can park, but nobody ever does it, so is it really worth having? You know, is that something that maybe we can take out of the code and, you know, just not have it? You know? I think it's a kind of a comprehensive look at things, you know, especially if we're trying to introduce more biking and walking and, you know, I look at it as a safety issue, that's why. So, but that's all I got about that. You guys got anything else?
Excuse me. I was gonna raise the issue of East Street, just in terms of kind of where we're at with that, but I have a feeling the parking task force may be addressing, once we kind of get these pieces down a little bit more clearly, I think East Street will become more clear.
Yeah.
But I think there is an urgency to that location in terms of safety that we have to really address soon.
Right, and I think that's part of that. We got the new parking enforcement officer, and we know that now that we know we've been getting some complaints about around school time, getting the students up to school and back, so I think we can, you know, ask the city administrator to have the parking enforcement officer maybe try to get up there a little bit before that, you know, kind of monitor a little bit and see what they're seeing. You know, data speaks a lot,
Yeah.
you know, so,
So that actually is may I raise this? This is actually related to East Street.
go ahead.
So, but I don't wanna, if you had anything else, it's our last item is to talk about parking, so I didn't know if you wanted.
Yeah,
Did Chris have something?
you want,
I was just gonna interject that we've installed, will be towed signs up and down East Street.
Oh,
And I understand the police department is gonna actively tow people that are violating the parking regulations on East Street moving forward.
Okay.
Is that your understanding, Greg?
Yeah, I wasn't sure when the signs had gone up, but yeah.
I think I noticed that recently. I was driving.
Okay, I'll have to look for that. Okay, that's good to know that there's been some movement.
I think they installed them last week.
is that something that we can get out in the like the newspaper and stuff, that, yeah, we installed these things and this is
I mean,
what you
we
start
can.
looking at?
We can do a public service announcement,
Yeah.
Yeah, that we put these up and be prepared, we're gonna
Yeah.
tow.
but,
Yep.
I mean, you can be towed now as it is.
Right.
Without that signage.
Well, I know that, but I just, if we can get it out there, then, you know, that's another form of deterrence, you know, that we're,
Yeah,
So-
we can work on something to that effect.
found out communication seems to be what everybody wants from us, so I think the more we can get out there, then,
And I think also it just will communicate to folks and let them know, you know, there were several folks who had come to this committee, you know, with concerns that they wanted addressed, and, you know, it is, I think there's still, you know, work that is being done, but it is started, so that'll assure them.
take steps.
So you want us to bring this back in a couple of months after we gather more data and compile the
Yeah.
general discussion?
Yeah,
Like March, I think you said?
yeah, March, I think that would be a pretty good selection, I would think.
So it's related to our discussion on East, and that is, the concern has not only been, you know, in terms of parked cars, but also speed along East. And I had a resident contact me about the possibility for the creation, or at least investigation, of a four-way stop at the corners of, East and Bugby, and then the third road, that's
Meadowbrook.
Meadowbrook, thank you. I knew it was something pleasant. So, in the corner of Meadowbrook. And I mentioned this just casually, and that and the response was that from the cities, that there might need to be a speed study done.
Well, not just speed, but overall intersection study. If you're gonna institute some sort of traffic control, like a stop sign or signal, that sort of thing needs to be justified by a traffic study, so we would have to do that.
So I was just curious about kind of opening up that discussion as a possibility. So it would be, the resident is concerned, and I think this actually is a concern for that population of residents on East, is the speeding coming down East Street towards the city. So the thinking was that if you had a stop sign right there, right before the density, because it goes from, you know, there's not many houses, and houses are far from the road, to being fairly dense. So at Bugby and Meadowbrook on East, you would have this four-way stop that would kind of force people to watch their speed. So I just wanted to find out further what that would mean if there was the possibility for some kind of study.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first step in that kind of a study would be doing a turning movement count, so you see how many cars are going and turning in which direction, where, and when throughout the day. Generally, stop signs, you can't justify a stop sign as a speed control measure on its own. I mean, that's not what they're intended for, and that's generally not something that can be justified with a study. But when you look at the traffic movement, Bugby to East and back and forth, that's where probably the majority of traffic is going. So that's a factor you look at in the study, is is there a lot of turning movements there
Yeah.
that might justify some sort of a controlled signal, but
And so a stop sign would be justified because of pedestrian or traffic safety, is that the purpose?
yeah, it could be, yes.
But speed wouldn't be part of that.
Right, stop sign's not a recommended speed control on its own. extreme example, you wouldn't put a stop sign to slow down cars on Lettuce Highway, where there are no intersections, but maybe you think people are going too fast because there are people walking along there, but to put a stop sign in the middle of that, you'd create an issue, you'd have rear endings and that sort of thing, where obviously that's an extreme example. Same sort of concepts would apply anywhere where you don't want to put a stop sign on a road that has vastly more traffic than volume than the side street.
Right.
So there's a number of factors that we'd have to look into, and we'd likely hire an engineer that specializes in that to do it.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Chris.
So if it's a priority of this group for me to hire an engineer to do a study at that intersection, I can. I do have an ongoing list of studies that we've been hoping to do, of other road intersections in the city, one including Rose and Main's one. I don't have them all memorized, but Rose and Main's one of them, Third and Main, what's the other one above Third, Greg? Walling?
Walling half.
Yeah, Third and Walling, the lights there, we wanna do studies for those to change or eliminate the lights there. So, if this is a new priority, I do have a new budget to work from for engineering studies. If it's something you guys want me to do, I can get a price.
Okay. And the purpose would be, just to kind of clarify what Greg was saying, the purpose would be to just determine whether or not it would even be necessary. So it may not even be necessary, a stop sign may not even do what
What's the one for Rose and Main? I mean, I guess, before I can answer the question, I don't know why the other ones are on the list, like, what's the,
We wanna eliminate, we wanna see if it's possible to eliminate the lights, because there's a cost associated with the signals being, we pay a electric cost, and we don't have to pay that utility bill, that's a savings to the city. If the engineer determines that it's not a necessary thing, we can eliminate it. Originally, the Rose Ave light was there because there was heavy truck traffic coming there because of the cement plant, and that, being it's no longer there, it may be feasible to eliminate. It needs to be evaluated.
And I just wanna add that those two lights that you mentioned by Third and Walling there, that's come up in, ward meetings, cause that's in my ward there, in Ward 1. And that's where it's those two lights, on Main Street by Walling and then by the hospital there. And I know I've heard some feedback that people find that very, just
Long.
annoying, I think, yeah. Like,
Long waits.
why are there two lights right in a row, right next to each other, kind of, is what I've heard.
We did a little study of our
So-
own and put them in
Mhm.
flash mode last year? Or the year before? I can't remember.
ago?
We did a little test for ourselves to
Yeah.
see how it would go in flash mode, and everyone that drive down Main Street loved it.
Yeah, it was
People
the
pulling out of the side
lights.
streets didn't like it.
Oh, I do remember.
And we
that.
did have
That's where they
at least
were.
one pedestrian that walks that route frequently told me that it was more difficult to cross the road.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He felt like it was, not as conducive for pedestrians, so there's that obviously factor.
Yeah, I cross a little further up, and sometimes it's not very easy to cross Main.
So in that location, maybe not elimination of both
Yeah.
lights, but maybe just one.
Mhm.
But we need an engineer to evaluate
Yeah.
that for us. So, it's on the radar.
I'm okay, I think it should go on the list, I just,
Mhm.
Cecilia, where would you like to see it on the priority list, I guess? Do you wanna,
Well, I think there's just hearing, I've been hearing a lot from these East Street residents that their concerns around traffic, so this would be just another tool
Yeah.
that they could point to say, okay, well, the city's been, investigating at least
Right.
what it would mean. What does it look like even there? Based on their observations, it seems like X, Y, and Z, the people are coming from outside, coming from down that hill, going really fast. Is that really the case? So this would at least allow us to see, if that's really what's going on.
And the other thing I'm thinking is that if, depending on what the result is, if it indicates that that's not the best, that might indicate, point us more in the direction of some of those pedestrian and other, things that we were talking about for safety planning.
Right.
I do have one more thing I want to add regarding the signal lights on Rose and Walling and Third.
Yeah.
The controls are very expensive and they're becoming outdated. And if and when we need to replace them, which could be right around the corner, if we can eliminate them versus replacing them, that will also be a cost savings.
is it cheaper to have an engineer come in all at one shot? like, so if we're gonna look at, like, say, Rose and
East and Bugby.
East and Bugby and,
I would say yes, there probably would be some kind of cost savings having multiple done. I think we obtained pricing, we did East Street and Graduate Ave, which is the high school entrance, and we did Church and Chestnut 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Back then, they gave us a list of like 6 intersections we were gonna have them evaluate, we only picked 2 of them, because I had them price each one individually, because I knew they were gonna be expensive. I mean, I say expensive, $5,000–6,000 each. So I only have a budget of $30,000 for engineering, and that's any engineering that the city may need. So I gotta be frugal with that.
I guess, price it out. I mean, the year's still young.
Yeah. Things do happen.
It's a long year.
Yes.
Yeah, I say I'd definitely add it to the list, definitely say that. And then when you get ready to do your list, maybe they can just cost it out, see how much.
You want me to come back to the next meeting with a quote?
Sure.
Okay. Do that.
$1,200's a nice number, Chris.
That was my only,
That's the
so
only one?
East Street again is my
We haven't got,
one topic tonight that I wanted to address.
we haven't got a lot about East Street.
I have one thing too.
Go ahead.
If we're ready. So I've gotten some concerns from folks in my ward about bicycles on sidewalks and wanting to address that. And I should have checked with David Versig about this, but somebody had told me that they'd been told by him that we need to have signage on our sidewalks in order to enforce those rules. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but either way, I'd like to, discuss safety of bicycles on sidewalks.
That was not.
We have rules about it, just enforcing those rules.
It's certainly in the city code, I've seen.
Yeah, I think it's 12 and under, right, can ride on the sidewalk, and anybody older should be in the street, but there's a lot of folks who are seeing adults on the sidewalks, as well as even motorized, transportation on sidewalks too.
Yeah, I guess the first thing is to check with our city attorney, see if we have to label anything. That's the first I've heard we had to label anything.
What I was-
That would surprise me,
What
but,
I was gonna say is
yeah.
not only, so there's the concern about the bikers on, but what could we be doing to make
Yeah.
the roads more bike friendly,
Mhm.
so that people don't feel like they need to ride on those
Yeah.
sidewalks?
'Cause when I talk to people who bike on sidewalks,
Yeah, what
that
is that
is,
about?
yeah.
A fear of the car.
I
Imagine
mean,
that
Yeah.
of car traffic.
I see them even in the designated bike lane we got up the viaduct, I see them riding up and down the sidewalk, so I'm not really sure it's
Yeah.
a lane issue, I think it's,
It's about design.
Yeah,
Do you feel safe and
Yeah.
comfortable
right.
That's right.
riding up the viaduct
Yeah.
in that bike lane
No.
as it's drawn on the road now? I think people generally don't feel comfortable
Yeah.
doing that.
So I think it's a safety issue, right, on both sides. Like
feel like-
pedestrians want to feel safe on the sidewalk, but the bicyclists also want to feel safe, and how do we provide for their safety?
I think if there's a way to gather any data from your residents or otherwise, where are people seeing the issue?
Sure, okay.
It kind of tells, just like when you see a path through the grass, that maybe is a place to put a sidewalk. If you see bikes in the sidewalk, maybe it's a place to invest in.
Yeah, I'll get some more specific, because it was definitely just a general concern about, that, but I'll ask for more, and I can bring that back at the next meeting.
As a cyclist, I think the best part to label the bike lanes is possibly painting them green. Down like more major cities, we usually have painted bike lanes are more like green, and up in Europe they're like red sometimes. And I think maybe in the future possibly invest in protected bike lanes like more curving
Yeah.
and bollards.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
My sister's a bicyclist, and she ended up in the emergency strips instead of squares, and so her bike hit one of those storm sewer things and just threw her right away, and they took her to the emergency room. She was banged up, but, okay. So that, I know, was one concern she had, was just that it's tough to ride a bicycle sometimes in Noniana.
Yes. Was she wearing a helmet?
Yes,
That's good.
oh yes,
That's good.
but even the helmet cracked.
Oh, wow.
That's how hard she hit.
Yeah.
Cause it was like the bike just all of a sudden was down in this little, storm sewer drain, and
Yeah.
she went flying.
Do you know where that's located?
I think it was like across from the police station, the viaduct,
Oh,
maybe, that area. I'm not positive, it was long enough ago that it may even have been replaced by now. You people keep upgrading as much as you can.
We've been slowly replacing all those type of grates throughout the city.
Yeah,
I'm just wondering where it's located.
yeah. But you're aware of it, it's something that needed to be replaced, and, no, you guys are doing a great job. And of course, Mark has a sign maker now, so we have signs all over the place. I mean, for 45 years, I was on my street and all that, Greater Plains traffic and everything, never had a problem. Now, every other property has a sign on it that says, park here except Mondays 6 to Tuesday 6, and anyway, that's an aside.
Is that a police enforcement on bicycles?
I think so, yeah.
Officer Havens used to ride around on a bike.
The only guy I saw do two pumps and get up top of the viaduct from Newall Park. Kid you not, 2 pumps on the bike, phew, sounded like a rocket going off.
Oh, jeez.
And no, he was not after me. Yeah, we'll definitely, we'll look into that citywide, see what we gotta do. If you don't see me write an email by the end of the week, send me a reminder. But I do have it here. Well, unless I went to the attorney.
I just had a quick question for Greg. Are you familiar, are there any small cities in New York that are providing protected bike lanes? Like, is that something that's so far afield from the conversation around biking, in your state, or is it something that's being talked about?
I'm not sure of any specific small cities. I'd have to kind of investigate.
Yeah,
Obviously, protected bike lanes are the most expensive kind of bike infrastructure to install because, and you also need the right of way for it, which means eliminating lanes or
Right.
acquiring more right of way.
right.
Parking, that would be, in most cases in the city, we don't have very wide roads, so that would be a concern. But it's something that I've looked at, conceptually, like how can we improve our bike infrastructure? We talked about this a little bit, I think, in the last meeting. I think at some point, we keep talking about this, we should have really a larger conversation about a complete streets plan.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
policy, we look at those things when we're looking at street projects, but do we need to come up with more of a network plan?
I've
'Cause
also,
that's the issue with the viaducts, bike lane. It's not part of a network,
No.
one of the issues.
and I've also been wondering, where in that conversation, like, do we need to have a conversation at some point about, the use of the electrical modes of transportation that we see, throughout the city, and, how those are utilized, on the streets. Because we have rules, right, for bikes and rules for cars, but I don't think we have, codes yet for, the proliferation of different, vehicles we see being used.
Wouldn't they just wouldn't we assume they would follow the biking
Maybe
rules,
they do,
regulations, but
I'm not sure.
it's worth a conversation.
Yeah.
So would the complete streets conversation perhaps be part of the comprehensive plan update? Would that be, because it's a smart growth?
I think that would, the comprehensive plan would likely, I think it does now, reference
Mhm.
a desire to do complete streets and
Mhm.
planning, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
The plan itself is more of a specific thing that would be something that would follow the comprehensive plan.
Mhm.
I think there are some funding sources out there for this sort of thing that we could look at.
Funding specifically for.
For like a complete streets plan,
Mhm.
something like the Climate Smart Communities grant that we project for the Lettuce Highway
Mhm.
secondary grant, but we can get planning grants too.
Just thinking, cause I like the colored lane idea,
Mhm.
different colored lanes, that's something we could look into.
Yeah, we did when we initially painted the white lines on the side of Main Street that are bike lanes that, you know, need to be repainted, just like every other pavement marking we have. We looked at that, it was very expensive, at the time, and that's why it wasn't done.
Hmm.
When we did Market Street, we didn't do any kind of bike lane down through there, did we?
No, that was designed to be low speed, so bikes would be able to ride with traffic there without concern about traffic. The width was not sufficient to add a protected bike lane without also eliminating width in the sidewalk or eliminating width on the median and not having a median or eliminating parking. So competing factors.
I still like the colored lane idea.
Yeah, that is neat.
Yeah.
It does make it pop out, it's nice.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's an expense, but it sounds like it might be more affordable than, you know, some of the other built options, I'm guessing, right?
Trying to put in a, protective,
Yeah.
Yeah.
small steps. I believe in small steps. Like you
Yeah.
try something that's,
Yeah.
see how it
Although
goes, see how it's used.
Yeah, but once you are in a city that has protected bike lanes, it's like, there's just nothing beats it. I mean, it's just unbelievable in terms of, it's like a no-brainer. So, you know, it's getting to that point, that's a challenge. We're not even near that conversation.
No, but, I mean, to try to take some of the concern